The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Mahatma Gandhi said this. I was browsing through some different leadership quotes as I prepared a speech for you guys, and the topic was servant leadership. And this quote really sticks out for that idea that you need to really find yourself through service. So servant leadership can be applied to all aspects of your life, not just those that you deem as leadership. It's very helpful to learn more about. So I did a lot of different research on it, both online, and I've been to lots of different conferences so that I could give you guys the most important aspects that I think apply to servant leadership by going through kind of a general definition, an applied definition, and servant leaders in the 21st century. So we'll start off with a basic definition. What is servant leadership? It comes from kind of a different mindset than many other leadership styles. For example, authoritative leadership has a central focus on control and power, but contrary to that, servant leadership has a root solely in service. Robert Greenleaf, in his essay, The Crisis of Leadership, said, "Leadership was bestowed upon a man who was by nature a servant." He goes on to say that the great leader was a servant first. This is a super important principle of servant leadership, that you're a servant first and a leader second. We can apply this to our lives by looking at student athletes. I know many of you are student athletes, and there's a lot of different requirements that go along with that. You have to keep up your grades, you have to do your homework if you want to compete and practice as an athlete. If you fail to be a student, if you fail to keep those grades up, at some point you become ineligible. And because you weren't a student first, you're unable to be an athlete. That's directly related to how you have to be a servant leader. Servant leaders can't expect to not serve anyone, just go right for the control and power of leadership and succeed. You really have to focus on that first aspect of serving others before you can become a leader, before you can become a servant leader. So that's kind of the bare bones definition. But we move on to more of an applied definition. How is servant leadership practiced? So the first step of servant leadership is always service. Who are you serving, why are you serving them, and how are you going to serve them? In some situations, you'll find that you can't find a way to serve. I've been there before. It's okay, it just means you're not the right leader for that situation. You can always be a follower, but if you're struggling to find a way to serve, that might be a sign that you're not the right leader. But to practice servant leadership, we can look at 4 steps, which I've adapted from Stephen Covey's 4 Rules of Leadership. Step 1 is to be an example or a model. You can't expect anyone to follow you if you can't model it yourself. So you really have to start with yourself. Then you can move into step 2, which is pathfinding. You should never dictate a mission to your followers. You should never say, this is what we're doing, you have to do this. They'll never want to do it. You have to cultivate within them and help them create their own vision or their own mission. And once you have that, the ideas will just remain ideas unless you align them with action. Step 3 is alignment, by taking concrete steps and setting them in place so that you can follow through with those great visions and ideas you had in pathfinding. Then step 4, arguably the most important, is empowerment. You have to empower your followers. You have to motivate them. You have to give them constructive criticism, and you really just have to build them up if you want them to succeed. So it's kind of the basic definition. That was like the practice definition. Now, what does it mean to us in the 21st century? Like, is servant leadership actually alive and in use in the 21st century? So what I did was I started searching, and I tried to find some 21st century servant leaders, and I was surprised that a lot of familiar names popped up. So I looked on servetolead.org, which is a great resource, and I found 2 really dynamic 21st century leaders I want to share with you. The first is Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was the CEO and co-founder of Apple. Many of you, I'm sure, have Apple devices or have used Apple devices. They are very integral parts of our society. And they become so popular and so successful because of a focus on the customer. They're predicting what people need and what people want. The second servant leader I'm highlighting is very different. Lady Gaga. This is someone that I was surprised to read as well. But because she serves those who can't serve themselves, she really puts herself up there with servant leaders by amplifying her unique personality to really be a voice for the voiceless. So these 21st century leaders are a very kind of good note to bring our formal learning today to a close. They have such great inspirations. I know reading up on them made me feel more inspired. So to review, we kind of went over that general definition, applied definition, and the 21st century examples. And we learned that servant leadership is all about service first and leadership following. It's truly the leadership style of the future. Our time's come to an end, but the journey is just beginning for you. I've armed you with a lot of great knowledge to dive deeper, and may you always find ways to serve.